I got into the hobby by way of my parents. Obviously, as a child, we all grew up with toys, and my toys happened to be trains. My first toy was a model clockwork engine, an 040, similar to what you can see in the background. And then when I was 7, I had my first train set as a birthday present. But I remember I was very possessive. I didn't want the other friends that came, and they were good friends, to play with it. And of course you learn a valuable lesson that you've got to share. The social aspect is the biggest appeal. We've made so many friends as a family, because once you've got people that maybe not necessarily it's their main interest, but would come out of curiosity to see this railway in the garden. And of course, inevitably, someone would say, "Oh, I've got an engine, I think it's the same scale." And so you invite them along. And of course, one thing leads to another, and then great friendships are formed. So I've got many friends that have been friends for 30, 40 years. And of course, it really comes to life with a variety of different locomotives. You can't own everything yourself, that's impossible. You haven't got the room, and of course you haven't got the big, sometimes money that's needed. But by allowing visitors to come and run on the railway, you do get to see these lovely things that otherwise would be in a display case or locked away, sadly. Yes, I can run it myself and enjoy it, but it's not the same. And it's not necessarily a men's environment. We do get wives and girlfriends come along, and it's not just, oh, we enjoyed your garden pool, but we enjoyed also your hospitality and the trains. If you start discriminating or limiting it, it doesn't work. People are all different. We all come from different backgrounds. Some of us are very wealthy, some are not. Some have got high opinions of their locomotives, think they're the bee's knees. Mum and Dad worked very hard, like most parents did, and try and provide. Of course, didn't have a great income coming in. So my father used to work not far from Hamleys, and used to go to Hamleys in his lunch hour. And in them days, they had what they called a 10-shilling box, which was stuff that was near enough okay, but there might be a buffer missing or a wheel loose or something like that. Well, Dad was quite clever, he could fix most things, but he also knew people that were engineers. So, for instance, my first locomotive was an 08 shunter, which in real life they're still available today and it's still in use on the big railways, but in model form it had the buffers missing. So a very good friend of his said, "Oh, I'll turn you up some buffers for your son." The only thing was they were about 2 gauges too big. In other words, they were like the scale was oversized, but I absolutely loved that engine. And I never painted the buffers, I just liked them because they were like gold. Although they were brass, to me they were like gold and more valuable than if you'd gave me a perfect loco. It meant everything because it had that little personal touch. My job, I was very lucky. I only had to work Monday to Friday, never really worked weekends, and a couple in my life really, very fortunate. And so I had plenty of time to work on the railway. Without Mum and Dad's support, definitely, and their encouragement, yes, it could have gone in very different directions. My father helped me greatly, but when I got to about 11, he said, "Well, you're on your own now." He said, "You've got to learn to do things yourself. So it's your railway, you continue." And he said, "Whatever you do, if you want advice, I will help you, but it's basically down to you." When we had the railway proper as the Green Valley Railway, he said, "Well, you are the operator and owner," but he said, "I want to be the president of the railway." So he adopted himself as the president of the railway. And of course, Mum, in a way, has helped behind the scenes really with the catering side of things, counted the money out after it had been donated so we could give it to the church and the Children's Society. But a valuable lesson was learned, because although I loved railways, into railways, Mum said, never be boring, never bore people with it. It's a bit like someone going on about football all the time, or cricket all the time, or something like that. You've got to be all listening as well and learning about other people's interests. When my parents passed on, I thought, yes, they indicated, that they wanted me to continue, with the railways, an interest personally, but also for the amount of friends and people that we'd made and got interested in it, and also visitors. And so I thought, rather than just keep it as the Green Valley Railway, the Edroy Garden Line, I would include their names. And the word Edroy, it's a short, obviously, for Edna and Royston, or Roy, because Dad had Edroy as his sort of pseudonym for his little film company. So I thought the Edroy Garden line would be quite appropriate. So when we had the new benches come after the third rebuild, ready for our opening in 2019, there's 2 of the benches which have got the dedicated plaque on. And on there it says, in loving memory to Edna and Royston Gumbrell, who inspired their son interest in the railways. Because without them, as I say, I could have gone down a different route. I could have been into cars, model aeroplanes, things like that, but trains for me was the thing. Working on the railway, well, there's a thought. One time everybody says, what do you want to do when you get old? And as a youngster you say, I want to be an astronaut, or I want to be a fireman or an engine driver. If I had become a railway driver or working on the railway, I wouldn't have had time really to do the models, because it was obviously shift work. Well, obviously when it came to almost my time for leaving school, I already in my mind really wanted to be a professional model maker. And there was a number of companies around that expressed an interest, but unfortunately it wasn't forthcoming. And my parents said, you ought to have another string to your bow. You're very good at carpentry, you've done well at school. And so, also with the help of my father, he had a word with the Clerk of Works of Westminster School, which is the private school tied in with the Westminster Abbey. Sure enough, he said, look, I've arranged for you to see the Clerk of Works. Get yourself up there, take some of your best bits that you've made, and go smart, tidy up. And sure enough, I went along, and the Clerk of Works asked me a lot of questions, and thought I was obviously of good repute and good character. And said, right, if you'd like to present yourself the following Monday, we'll give you a chance. Anyway, I immediately on the way home, I had some money. I go into the phone box, phoned home and said, I think I've got the job, yippee, and never looked back. And of course, the job as a carpenter and joiner, best thing I did was went to college, and I did 6 years at the London School of Building at Lime Grove, not far from the topical studios of the BBC or the BBC Theatre, of course at Shepherd's Bush. And I did all my City and Guilds, advanced craft as well. In the end, I was doing national diploma in building industry. I went for almost 5 years, and then the boss said, I think you better do a 5-day week, because otherwise you're going to get a degree, which would be unheard of. Yeah, the question about allowing one to take over the garden and build the railway, well, that's quite an undertaking, and yes, you've got to have permission in the sense that the domestic authority, because of being mother, Edna, my dear mum, and of course when you explain, you want to build a model railway, in a way it was a bit easier because I'd already had the model railway initially in Fulham. Our garden there was very small. Well, the situation here is we've got a terraced house, but of course big garden, and people say, oh, you only bought the garden because of Paul for the railway. I said, no, we didn't. He's still the lodger, and he calls himself the lodger, because we don't know if they get married and move away. That was always the begging question, will Paul lose his interest in trades, but I never did. Having moved in 87 here from Parsons Green, Fulham, to Rains Park, on the 11th of June I went down to collect the signal frame, all 2.5 tons of it. And of course, 3 days later I returned, and of course these things are not necessarily the cleanest of things. So straight away there was an issue. We are not bringing that through the house, but of course I had to put dust sheets down, and of course Mum, relented, and I hope you're going to put something there to collect all the grease and that on my patio. So of course Julie did, and then because she had to put up with it for 18 months while I built the foundations for the signal box, then moved the frame down, and of course said, no, I'm going to start cutting around the lawn. What? Yes, I'm going to start cutting around the lawn, taking some of the lawn away to make room for the railway so we can keep the path. Oh right, and how high are you coming up? Well, I want to build the railway. No, you're not, she said. I've got to cross over onto the grass to put the washing out on the whirligig, which of course is the washing line. And I know they would like me to continue, which they indicated before they moved on. The name of the Green Valley Railway really started back in 71, but I wanted to have my very own railway that had an identity, and I love the colour green. That's my favourite colour, and I loved the malachite green, which was a sort of light mid-green colour, and so I thought that would be the base for the back of a badge or the logo. And then I thought you ought to have a logo. So in them days we didn't have computers as such, or if they were very expensive, not affordable as a personal computer, nothing existed. So I got Letraset, And of course I was good at art. I used all different bits of letraset to make up the logo of a little steam train with the wording around the top, so Green Valley Railway. That's caused an interest. For instance, yesterday I was over at the Isle of Wight Steam Railway, and one of the ladies in the shop, she said, one question she said while she was serving me, she said, "Where is the Green Valley Railway?" And I found it's always good to have a pin badge on, because people, whether they're interested genuinely or not, will always ask, "Where's that?" And then of course you can start a conversation off. Having set up the railway, my parents, especially my mum, Edna, she said, "You've got to have it for a purpose, not just for enjoyment, but also, to offer something back, to give something back." And so we decided that obviously we'd raise funds for charity, but for what charity? Well, we very much are church people. We decided that there was people at the church who collected for the Children's Society, which was a worthy cause, helping children here and afar. Also for the church itself. We divided the money equally, whatever's come in. The very early first open day, which was in 1988, up until 2013, we raised around about £8,000. And then the railway recently reopened again in 2019 to the present day, and already we've raised about £1,000. Yes, we do have a guest book. In fact, we're on our second book. We had one person, I know they just didn't come deliver it to see the railway, but they said, "Well, we've come on the Eurostar from France, and this happened to be open, so we thought we'd come along, Yeah, we have regulars that come back, like to see what's happened over the railway over the years. And of course some of them now are married and grown up and got children of their own, or they're even grandparents. Said, "Do you remember me? I came when I was about 3 and now I'm about 25, got children of my own," and that sounds good. We've had Beaver Scouts come, Cub Packs, Woodfolk, ladies' institutions. We had one group came with bicycles, and they were doing a trip specifically around the Rains Park, looking at all the railway infrastructure, full size and miniature. And there was about 29 of them, and when they came there was bikes even locked up to the trees, for security. Well, it used to be my mum and her very good friend through the church, but I'm very lucky, a lot of my neighbours will join in. I've got a lot of friends that have got wives and that which will make cakes, but even some of the guys will make cakes. You'd be surprised how many men that retire and are good at making cake. I've built my own signal box. That's my greatest achievement. It was 18 months' work. When it came to initially start the project, my parents gave me some money for the railway here and setting up signal box, and I had a very good friend who was in the timber industry. I'll send a lorry along absolutely full of everything you need. But of course you had to then interpret into what you wanted as a signal box. So I did all the drawings, all the design, learnt how to do the brickwork after doing the foundations. And 18 months later, hey presto, I had my very own signal box. Well, because the main signal box, which has been added to, is based on where I retrieved the frame on, which is Eastleigh East. We tried to sort of get it around the period of 1900 onwards, so you've got everything that you'd normally find in a signal box. When the Cub Pack visited, they all sort of lined up in front of a lever each and had to go up pulling. Some found it easier, some found it a bit more difficult, but it's good fun, and it's a bit of a way of also educational as well. And there's 2 little girls at the church, very delightful, lovely parents, and I thought, wouldn't it be a nice surprise to name the signal boxes, give them like obviously signal cabin A, signal cabin B, or number 1, number 2, but have the girl's first name just included. So signal cabin number 1 is Hattie, which is the oldest daughter, and signal cabin number 2 is Ethel. And the nicest thing was that I got the parents to arrange with them secretly to get, finally it took some time when we could safely do it after all the lockdowns and everything, and they came along short enough and opened their very own signal boxes. So they got a certificate, a bag of goodies, i.e. sweets and things. And of course there can't be many little girls that have got 2 signal boxes named after them, so as proud as punch, went with their certificates no doubt to school the next day and showed all their schoolmates and their teachers, who I should imagine were absolutely amused and amazed,